All right, there we go. All right. Anyways, good morning, afternoon, evening to whomever may be watching this. My name is Dr. Joe Vertino, professional spiritual guide, author, musician, and Reiki master healer, Usui. And I'm here with my new uh, friend, Miss Crystal. And we have the one of, I would say, the best topics of all time, the need for kindness. So that's an interesting topic in the sense of the way it's worded, and sometimes we could have topics that are basically like, the philosophy of love, right? Or something kind of like that. In this one's worded a little different. The need for kindness, it has a very strong kind of like a pull, a gravity to it into kind of itself, right? Into what is it about? What does that mean? There's so many implications. So that's exciting. So I hope you watch the whole thing. So, anyways, that's my introduction in that way. Please do check out my content, however you can: YouTube, Facebook, Amazon Books, music on SoundCloud, etc., and on other people's stuff, other podcasting, etc. So, yes. So, can you give a brief introduction, my friend
Hello, my name's
Crystal?
Crystal. I'm from Alaska, born and raised. I've traveled and lived outside the states a few times, but I was basically raised in my mom's culture of Siberian Yupik Eskimo. And so the kindness thing, when you're raised by a village, you know it pretty deeply and pretty well, especially when you're raised as we're all one.
Yes, that's a
Um,
lovely. Yeah, not to interrupt. Oh, yeah, just lovely. Yeah. Yeah. Whatever else you want to share about yourself at all, go ahead. Obviously, sorry to interrupt.
no, it's all right. I lean towards more holistic healing because of the culture I was raised in. I do believe in westernized medicine for short-term use. A lot of the long-term uses of their medications have adverse side effects. Uh, I also was trained in Reiki um, and a few other holistic modalities, and the integration of them together helps you to have a better understanding of people in this universe and the interconnectedness of everyone. And yeah, I'm at.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, that's lovely. So many lovely words, to um well, yes. So, um yeah, it's obviously, a thing in our shared world that people that are into certain things like Reiki, in that sense, like if you put Reiki in the middle of it, like things like Reiki, right? And all these different kind of things, that those people have a certain kind of proclivity and or kind of bend into, I guess, like a progressive energy, right?
Yeah,
Progression, moving forward, right? Evolution, I guess, would be the official term, right? um just something to say. And I guess, going right along and beginning with our topic, and thank you for coming on the show, by the way. So the need for kindness, uh in that way, I mean, I've noticed it in my own personal life, and it's always, good to say or hear, experience that someone who is talking about a topic kind of backs it up with their own, nature, in the sense of what brought them to where they are as an individual, and the like. So, like I said, like in my own life, I've noticed the obvious need for kindness, and um, that it's technically everywhere, right? The need for it. So says Mr. Leo, right? In the sense of like a global, kind of all encompassing, like kind of the energy of the sun, I guess is why I said that one. But that it is literally like, everywhere, the need for it. But obviously, I guess we kind of have the maybe somewhat difficult task of kind of pointing out things, during our podcast together. Is there anything you want to start with in particular?
Oh, the one reason I tend to practice it and live it is because of my past. I had a very difficult upbringing. It wasn't the easiest, but I had a parent show me who I wanted to be, and I had a parent show me who I didn't want to be. And with everything that goes on in the world, you never know what's going on behind closed doors. You never know what people are experiencing or living every day. And when you go out, my one parent raised me to love unconditionally and accept everybody exactly where they're at in their lives, and that we all have a past and we all have skeletons in our closet, and to just live through unconditional love, which to me is what kindness is just pure unconditional love and acceptance of people in their journeys and where they are in life. And when you grow up in trauma and live through traumatic experiences, there are times you suffer in silence, and then you could see those that also suffer in silence and recognize them immediately. And that's one reason
Yeah.
I have to practice kindness.
Yes. You froze for a second. We were at you were talking very much. I don't know if you could there you go. Yeah, having a difficult upbringing and in the said one parent showing you what is you know, good and the other parent showing you what is bad. Yeah. Yeah, and thank you for your honesty, you know. Um I lost the tail end of the sentence. It broke up.
Oh my.
Uh you were saying something, I think it wasn't just about your parents, if you remember what that was.
Oh yeah. I mean, when you grow up in traumatic experiences and you grow up in chronic trauma, you tend to recognize those that suffer in silence. And when you've been silent most of your life and you've kept your voice to yourself most of your life and just observed, my one parent taught me to just love unconditionally and accept people where they are at in their journeys in life. That we all have a history and we all have a past and we all have skeletons in the closet. And to just, she told me I taught her unconditional love, and it was kind of both way street. Um, she taught me how to live unconditional love, and for me, that's exactly what kindness is loving people unconditionally. And to me, your neighbor is anybody you come across on the street, and to just lead with unconditional love. That's the ultimate form of kindness you could never give.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, well, yes. So I guess in this way to start well, we have uh I guess two kind of points, right? In the sense of our immediate experience when we're born, being our family, right? When we're yeah, and then I guess in that way that following, which could be anything, so to speak, in the sense of, I guess they say for all intensive purposes, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so in this way, my the next thing is like what you're saying, leading with kindness, and the implication there is other people right outside of our family. And by definition, the same root of the word familiar, right, comes from family, right? Familiar and family, the same root. So in that way, and obviously right off the bat, the most serious thing of our parents and our relationship with our parents, and that it's obvious to me certainly that need for kindness almost goes unspoken, right, between a parent and a child.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess the psychological implications, right, of all of that development that goes on this during your childhood, up to like, in North America or whatever, I guess we kind of put the age of like 17, on it, that now you're an adult or some kind of significant kind of landmark in your life. Uh, and so I guess in that way, finishing up this point, so I can hear more of your beautiful sharing, man. that need for kindness doesn't end, obviously, in just at our immediate family, right? It can't. And I guess the blessing of it is, like I said, that can be a very easily unspoken kind of like rule. I guess even want to use that word in the sense of like that kindness being needed, right, in the parent, child, sibling, domestic animal, right, all kinds of the immediate family, and that it can, I guess, remain unspoken technically. That as you are developing, when you go further in life, naturally you encounter more and more beings, right? Just like your parents and the dog are beings, you're a being, right? So
Mhm.
those are all beings, right? So you encounter more of those, and that need for kindness, like I said, can kind of be something that's, how you like you're drinking a drink, like we have to have water, and that water in that way, it can kind of, that kindness, right, can be like water, that it kind of satiates us, keeps us safe and sane, and then as we go and live our life, we kind of stay on the diet of it, right, in that way. And so it's a kind of like a basic psychological fact, that you're uh we kind of, as we're growing up, we develop that kind of muscle in ourself of receiving kindness, that it's not foreign to us, etc. And obviously my prayer is that happens in every family. um and there certainly is a reason that our parents outnumber us, meaning that there's two parents and one us, right? And it's supposed to, has to, and supposed to be that being kind of overwhelmed by, that loving connection. uh so I guess in that way, I guess, us understanding the seriousness of kindness, that it's not something that's just um well, I even want to say it's not just anything, but that's not completely true in the sense that it's meant to be, supposed to be just our family first, right? And then as we grow and go out into the world, and or the world comes to us, right? One and the same thing. That kindness never really should kind of wane, right? Shouldn't become hidden. And in that way, the self kindness, is us following our highest excitement, right, to the best of our ability. Um, in that way, self love, self kindness, self respect, self acknowledgement, all of that, is the fuel for our lives. And then in that way, us understanding that, wait, I can see how in my highest excitement, which could have seemed selfish, there is kindness for other people. So those are the people that maybe we could say were abused, right? That had difficult childhood, that these people start to recognize kindness for other people on their own because they didn't receive it, right? Because they were abuse victims. So as you follow your own highest excitement, and I certainly, obviously pray that people can do that, can start with a, kind of like a tiny grain of sand, and feel maybe a little bit a inch of gratefulness. It's like if you're on the beach, and you have this beautiful landscape, but say you're at the extreme of despair and you're suicidal, and you're 17, you're past the age of the adulthood, and you're sitting on the beach and you just look at a grain of sand, and you start to have a little bit of an epiphany, that you become grateful for this grain of sand. And then in that, your life basically starts, right, your actual life, like the life that Jesus Christ, the ascended master, would talk about, being full of life, in that kind of way. So anyways, um yeah, so that's a lot of words from Dr. Joe. I would love to hear more. And you could change the topic, ask a question, ask me a question, anything you want at all. We're doing great
I
so
think I'm
far.
gonna
And
go
we're
off.
only 14 minutes in.
I think I'm gonna go off your self kindness for a second and childhood traumas and abuse. Um, I've observed. I've always been an observer and a deep thinker and critical thinker, and I tended to observe the ones that were observing me, and not just that, just observing in general. And as someone who grew up in trauma and came from abuse, I've noticed that it can go one of two ways. You either become that what you watched growing up, or you do not become that what you watched growing up. So if you were raised in like a narcissistic, abusive home, I've noticed that some become the narcissist, and then
Mm.
some become that which they do not want to be watching growing up. And it comes a lot into where the self-worth and the self-kindness and the self-love, uh, if you didn't receive that, that's kind of a stunted part of your growth from childhood. If you did not receive that nurturing and the were taught how to healthily handle your emotions and feelings, you kind of got this unworthiness, unlovable, don't know how to manage type thing. And then you notice it and you start healing and you go to therapy and all this. But I think it's a lot depends on one's morals, values, and integrity about practicing and going forth in life with kindness and an understanding that
Mhm.
you don't really know what's happening to people. You don't know what they're going through that day. You don't know if they just lost somebody they loved in their life or a pet that was family to them. You don't know if they just lost a job, going through a divorce, going through a breakup. You just never know what somebody's going through, and it's just give somebody a compliment if you see something you like about them when you're out during the day, or if you see somebody struggling, go help them with their bags, or just practice how you want to be treated, especially if you grew up in abuse and whatnot. You know what it feels like to have to feel validated most of your life, to have to seek external validation because you didn't receive the love and the kindness that a parent should have been giving you and nurturing you with. So that feeling of that unworthiness and unwanted, unlovable. And that's why I think you should just practice
Yeah,
kindness, period.
you're breaking up a lot, unfortunately.
Let me see if I
Yeah,
that one.
yeah. You were breaking up a lot, but I got some of that. Um, yeah, I mean, I guess in that way that, well, I guess I could ask a question.
Well, now you're breaking up. You are frozen at question.
Anyways, sorry about the technical difficulties, everyone. Um, hopefully you come back on and you unfreeze. There you are.
You were
Hello.
frozen.
Um,
You got frozen at question.
I was gonna ask. I guess in that kind of way, uh, um, well, I guess this first part isn't a question, but in the sense of recognizing the need for kindness, I guess as a master healer, I kind of like to take on the most difficult things and or wounds, we could say, and I think of like the the thing that we have nowadays is like that kind of what would it be is like kind of like the numb. People are numb, right? So in that way, I guess that would be kind of like this wall or blockage of the need for kindness. In that sense of that, in the sense that, uh, and I guess that can go kind of unseen. I guess in that way, I guess kind of commenting on that some, um, and uh and of course praying over that ends, and everything like that. um so that numbness that in here, right,
Mhm.
that is obviously a need, a need for kindness, right, our numbness, uh in ourself, if we get in that place where we can't really sense or feel enough, to move forward in our lives even, right.
Disassociation.
And I guess what's that?
Disassociation. It's called
Disassociation is
disassociation.
exactly the right. Yes, ma'am. That's right. Yeah, yeah, in that sense that, we're kind of like in a natural state, that we're associated with, and then basically that, as as life progresses, or even some of these people would say as pain happens, right? Instead of saying like as life progresses, basically we can start to get to that place in ourself where it becomes numb, and the real challenge and the real problem is if we can't recognize our own personal need for kindness, in ourself or in our own heart,
Hmm.
um, and then that obviously makes it difficult to recognize the need for kindness in other people. So I guess just kind of, I know that's a very difficult topic, but um, I mean, you might as well, I was just thinking like you might as well go with that, that difficult uh, thing, if there's obviously for people that are afflicted with that, you know, and leaving, I guess, fault out of it, because I know how the mind works, right? We can kind of go into that place of my fault, other people's fault, and just kind of allow ourselves to
Blaming.
let go of that for a while. Yeah, blaming. Yes, ma'am.
And a lot of that, honestly, kindness thing. I know growing up back in the day, neighbors used to be truly neighborly, and you'd spend meals together, have meals together, check in on one another. If the parent wasn't home, you went to the neighbor's house, and as the years have gone by, that became less and less and less. I mean, if a neighbor was going through hardship or something, the rest of the neighbors would gather up and assist them. And I've just, the world has just become more and more disconnected and bigger, faster, easier, instant gratification. And it kind of, yeah, in some ways it's good, and in some ways it's not, because it disconnects us from one another, and it disconnects us from the value of relationship with one another and the kindness we're talking about. It, that it's it, how do I put it? The way I see it, I guess, kind of is, it's a self-sacrificing world. You sacrifice yourself and your internal happiness to get, I guess, to keep up with the Joneses is what we called it when I was a kid. But I've noticed that a lot just traveling last year, how much disconnect there is in the world, and to me, that's a lot to do with technology and bigger, faster, better, and more instant gratification. I've always been taught, no
Hmm.
matter what, stop and smell the roses.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, yeah, absolutely. Definitely. Thank you for giving, and you actually naturally kind of intuitively went into kind of an answer, to that numbness, that great affliction, I think is the right word, affliction. We're afflicted with that numbness. Um, so I guess, and I already mentioned prayer in that way, and to me, prayer is the most important thing that there is in existence. Um, and I'm a very serious guy. I have a book on education system reform and everything like that, and very much, open. Generally, an open person, not really closed off in that way. Um, and I guess the proof, because a lot of the times people, if they're in a lot of pain and or confusion, which are two separate, distinct things, can kind of get to a place in somebody where it can do this kind of move where it can be convincing, that and you can come up with, I remember I learned in psychology, I had a wonderful psychologist who will remain anonymous, but he was a Leo like I was, for a short time in my life that was very, very difficult. And my life, unfortunately, has the majority of it has been, chronologically speaking, has been more adverse than easy, even though easy isn't quite the right word. Like, for example, if I got more work as a spiritual guide, um, uh, I certainly would be in a better place, right? Then that wouldn't be adversity, that would be work, that would be challenge, that would be moving forward in that way and helping people, everybody move forward. And then so basically, I guess, um, yeah. So thank you for providing some insight. Like I said, that's intuitive of you of stopping and smelling the roses, gratefulness, obviously. And you'll notice that as you allow practice is a serious word to use. I mean, if you think of it more, maybe like a practice for a game that doesn't matter, right? Like if you're practicing and then you're going to go play next week, a sport with your friends, but you're not being graded on it, you're not getting paid for it. Practice in that way, right? Kind of ease is the right word, certainly for that practicing of gratefulness initially, in particular for people that are afflicted with that numbness or block, particularly would be in their heart chakra, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because kindness certainly can go right in there. And yeah, and then so basically, I guess as we um allow our heart to open, right? Which is, the real need for kindness, we could say, is opening our heart chakra in the middle of our being there. Um, and yeah, so then basically, so what are the things that can do that, right? Stopping to smell the roses, gratefulness, yeah. And yeah, in that way, I guess you start to move forward in our personal healing journey. I talk about things like forgiveness. I think about in that way, people certainly, a huge need for kindness is people struggling with aloneness. If people are um alone, right? And you're in that place and your soul is craving something. You might not even recognize can say with words what it is, but kindness certainly would be that thing. And if in that way we can't immediately or at all sometimes unfortunately change the circumstance, but for us to be able to be at that place where we are in allowing energy, I think of that uh allowing gratefulness, allowing forgiveness, allowing healing. um yeah. And as a spiritual guide, that's a big part of my business, of surrender is a strong word to use, especially around men. I guess I like to say that men kind of would have that inner resistance to surrender naturally. um and so I do understand that, but I mean, I guess, yeah, kind of, I use the word allow. I think of like the yin yang, doing Tai Chi Qigong, the softest martial art. Yin is receptive to receive, and yang is outward, masculine energy. So for us to kind of allow, which would be yin, right, to receive
Feminine.
from the universe, instead of maybe anything else, I guess can be a very great gift that we give to ourselves. And obviously that leads us into the path of meditation, and working towards stillness itself as a goal. So if you understand that our universe already exists in, within, around, possesses stillness, right? It's a fact in that way. So us understanding that us being in resistance is futile, so to speak, kind of galactically speaking, to use that word again. So then basically you can start to realize that, oh, so that's basically the whole kind of gravity towards we could say like spirituality, in that way, meditation, all of that stuff, that there's a naturalness to it. It's not an unnatural thing. Um, and I guess obviously my prayer is that people don't have kind of that dread, in their life beforehand, right? That they can kind of gracefully move into that kind of realization in themselves personally. And I guess understand and then move towards, eventually attaining enlightenment, which is the greatest kindness, I guess, so to speak, that we could possess. Um, yeah. So, anyways, yes. Thank you for listening. I know that was a lot of words. Whatever you want to say, like I said earlier, any questions, anything.
Well, go. I'm just gonna touch on quite a few of the things you just touched on. Um, One way I was raised in my mom's Siberian Yupik heritage and culture, and the one thing my mother taught me that my grandfather taught her, the first being is our bodies are temples, and it matters what you feed it on a consistent level of body, mind, and spirit. What you feed it to nourish it, what you feed your mind, what you feed it, they're all interconnected, and from there we are all one. Atasiukut. In our language, that means we are all one, and so we are all connected. Not just humans, but all of it. And um, my mom was quite strict with my brother and I growing up. Uh, we weren't allowed television, we weren't allowed sweets, we weren't allowed processed foods, and she taught me. So that taught me to read everything, everything, backs of everything, anything I was putting in my body, anything. Since I wasn't allowed television, I just decided to learn. I try to learn something new every single day. And forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves that helps us with the whole kindness thing. It allows for other people to not live rent free in our heads that we felt have wronged us or harmed us. And just before my mom passed away, the last few years, she talked to me. We were talking, and she goes, "You know what, babe? It went from me teaching you to you teaching me." I started teaching her about the tree of life and the Kabbalah and forgiveness. She told quite a few people the last 2 years that it was I who taught her forgiveness. My mom was full-blooded Siberian Yupik Eskimo, and she had to endure. I know my mom's history, and she had to live through missionaries, and she had to live through boarding school, and that wasn't the greatest thing I think indigenous people could have lived through. And that's where a lot of her forgiveness had to come in from. I mean, at 5 years old, she had been beaten and degraded in front of the whole class for wearing her native regalia and speaking her native tongue. And she endured that through high school. I mean, and I've noticed personally a lot from observation of that generation and that era of indigenous peoples that had to live through all that tend to become addicts and alcoholics and also tend to get themselves into controlling abusive relationships. It's like a cycle, a generational cycle. And so just understanding where you come from and your history and your parents, it can make you understand yourself a lot better. And she also taught me no matter what you're going through, I mean, you could be going through the most heartbreaking, which I have been in the last year. I lost my adopted daughter to murder last January 3rd. Then my aunt I was living with and caring for died January 24th. Then my mom died June 3rd. And my aunt and my mom taught me a lot. I say we were raised together. I grew up with them basically is what I say. And it's like uh those who are my heroes. And it's taken a lot of getting used to the last few months of being alone. The aloneness you touched on. I made a quote when I was about 14 or 15. Those who are lonely often feel alone in their own presence. And that just reaches back to we're we're a mammal, we're an animal. But we're used to community, we're used to being with people, and that kindness that touches on, that's just a form of kindness. And you touched on some earlier. So oxytocin that you get from hugs, it's that good feeling, that warm feeling, that special feeling. And that same thing is produced. from kindness. You get that same induced good feeling, that same, it produces the oxytocin just like a hug would. And
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Um, I guess let me say some more stuff here. Yeah. My mom actually, my childhood, you mentioned yours, I'll mention mine. My childhood was wonderful. When I was obviously a little kid, my biological parents, my mom, my dad were there, and I was such a mama's boy, and my mom was such an excellent mom, and my excuse me, and my dad was great too, but he wasn't there as much. He was working. He was as a corrections officer, so he would drive, long distances and work like an 8 hour, 16-hour shift or whatever he was doing, and he'd come home and I'd be, oh, it's my dad. Oh, he's back. Woohoo. But my mom was I was so close with her. Um, but yeah, so I guess in that way, and I think of my mom, you mentioned oxytocin actually, and kind of she was a psychiatrist and a psychologist, and so for me, I think of in that way, I mean, I guess a more professional, less silly understanding of kindness, which would be, directly, I think, immediately of psychology, the field of psychology, um, in that way. And I'm sure they have whole books and, kind of theses, etc. And obviously work, in the field just with that as its own standalone thing, psychology of kindness and vice versa, in the sense of kindness in the field of psychology as a total thing. Um, and I guess that could be very healing. I would assert as a Reiki master. Um, I know I could seem like I'm a professional psychologist if people watch my stuff, but I'm not. I am a professional. I'm a doctor in Reiki alone, and in that way, I us what I was saying is what can be very healing is us knowing and kind of registering in ourself how serious kindness is taken by these people, by psychologists, and that we don't have to move an inch towards being sorry towards being like the psychologists, right? In that way it kind of almost defeats the purpose, right? But us kind of just knowing that, so it's not really an action, right? And it's not kind of like a canceling out of a behavior, or some kind of like advice or anything like this. But it really is more of like a just a knowing, like we're registering it in our being. There's a person out there who their entire job is literally what I need, right? That thing, and I don't know it. I don't it's some days it seems like I don't have a chance of getting it, or I only know a lick about it. So in that way, knowing that there's other human beings that are devoted, right, to just that, to as a Reiki master, I would say in kind of a bigger way, healing our heart chakra, and which can take words, at length, which is what talk therapy is about. And yeah, and understanding and returning back. I guess you'll notice this as a pattern, returning back to gratefulness and appreciation. I think about the intricacy of the human system, even in the sense of our brain chemistry and oxytocin, right? In that way, and in that understanding of ourself, and seeing our body and seeing our entire being as kind of like a miraculous thing, can be very, very healing also. So those are two points that are very important. And yes, 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 yes. Go
so
ahead.
getting back
Anything
to
you
your
want to say
heart
more?
chakra. Yeah, yeah. Getting back to your, and the gratitude thing, that I was getting to that when I was explaining the whole aloneness, and no matter what you're going through in life, there's always something you can be grateful for and show gratitude for. Even since I was a kid, I've written a gratitude list most of my life. I at least try to write 10 to 15 or say to 10 to 15 things every morning that I'm grateful for. There's a lot of things people take for granted, like hot water, electricity, connection, just connection, period. Clean socks. I mean, there's just always
Mm,
something to be grateful for. A warm bed. But getting back to the
absolutely.
heart chakra thing, to personally, I feel to be able to even begin to heal your heart chakra, you kind of have to begin to heal your throat chakra prior to healing, in unison with healing your heart chakra, because a lot of the times the reason it's closed off is because you don't know how to use your voice. You don't know how to use your words.
Yeah.
Um, that was another thing growing up. I observed is about anger and violence. For a long time, anger was in my shadows, and it's because growing up, to me, anger meant violence. And I too am a recovering alcoholic and addict, and I learned in my drunkenness, mind you. I was being violent. I came across somebody that was beating on their wife, and I, in turn, did something I shouldn't have. But in being drunk, I realized, you know what, Crystal? Violence begets violence. Why not use your words? So from that point forward, in my early 20s, I just started using my words. But yeah, you have to kind of heal the throat chakra in unison with the heart chakra, because a lot of the times it's because it's blocked. Your throat chakra is blocked, which in turn blocks your heart chakra from receiving. And a lot of people don't know how to receive. I mean, if you, a lot of people have noticed they are in addiction, uh, and that's the other thing I learned throughout life. Anything you do in excess is in fact an addiction. Uh, Everything you need to do is moderation, 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 moderation. Anything you do in more than moderation is in fact an addiction. As an act, a recovering addict, I'm like, I go to 12-step meetings and whatnot, and I get kind of bugged about it going to AA because you're only allowed to say, "Oh, I'm an alcoholic." But when I look at it, I pretty much like, "Hi, I'm Crystal. I'm addicted to anything that takes me away from self." And the thing about self is sometimes, we got to get brutally honest about learned behaviors. You've got generational conditioning, societal conditioning, parental conditioning, caretaker conditioning. And so sometimes you just got to get brutally honest with yourself about behaviors that were learned, learned toxic behaviors, learned toxic core beliefs, um, and just conditioning in general. We live basically in a fear conditioned world. Uh, Fear is instilled in us in a lot of different ways. Well, if you don't do it this way and you don't do it that way, this will happen. And every action has a reaction or a consequence. We're told we live. Everybody's like, America the free. We are a privileged country. We are not actually free. Yes, we have choice to use freedom of choice, but our choices will have consequences.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, I mean to say more on that, and that was lovely. Thank you, man. I think of we've talked a lot about the kind of seriousness side, of kindness in that way, and I think maybe to kind of transition into a more uh kind of maybe more middle of the road, right? In context of seriousness, right? And
I agree with
frivolity.
joy.
I Joy, yeah, joy. Well, that's the thing about joy. Joy, and I love the word, and I'm glad you said it, but I guess in a kind of a paradoxical way, joy really isn't the right word, because joy, the base of true joy is safety, right? And that's a very serious thing. But I guess kind of in that kind of way, joy I think of like as a complete thing. Like it's something that happiness is like a I to use an analogy, I think of like you know how we have like a fair and you can go buy pop the huge bags of popcorn, right? The Ferris
Yeah.
wheels, balloons, right? So I think of like the the balloon as kind of like happiness, right? If you buy like a single balloon or a couple of balloons and you kind of enjoy the balloon in that kind of a lighthearted, bouncy kind of energy to happiness. Joy is kind of like more of an understanding of I don't know if the analogy will work, but kind of like something in maybe more kind of a you know it's almost like a guarantee rather than happiness is almost like a spontaneity. um and you know the need for kindness, like this whole video in its essence is moving towards that you know kind of that joy, that very stable thing in that way, instead of that spontaneity, right, in that kind of like a you know kind of like a single balloon kind of thing. But I guess to go a little bit more into this thing, because we like I mentioned, like I said, we've covered a lot of the seriousness,
Boy.
right, of kindness. And I guess in that kind of way, understanding kindness, being kind to ourselves and other people, and understanding kind of, I guess, maybe what would that be? A sensitivity, you know, even an empathy of meeting people not just where we are or where we want to be or where we've been, but meeting them kind of with what they need, right, in the moment, and which is really kind of a skill that you can master as a human being, you know, of that this person, right, this person, like for example, later on, the maybe I think it already started. There's something here in Buffalo in the Elmwood Village called the Farmers Market, that I go to, where you can buy, you know, the farmers market. The farmers ship in veggies directly from their farm and different kind of things like chocolate.
Yeah, we
Uh,
have those up here.
yeah, all kinds of things like that. So we have one locally. I don't have a car right now because my life almost died. I was wrongfully accused, and I escaped my attorney and my private investigator that was publicly assigned because I was wrongfully accused, saved my life, and I was homeless, and now am just getting out of that, and I'm in a boarding house here in Elmwood Village, for $550 a month, and I got a bed and my sheets and my floor and my mirror and my window and a door, and then everything else is shared communally. But hopefully soon, I've already lined up some stuff where I'm going to have individual housing and my own bathroom and space and kitchen and couch and such, um, and a car. Thank God. But yeah, my point of that is I don't have a car, so I walk to that, right. And you know, right now I'm like on food stamps, literally right now. You know, in March 17th, 2025, at 10 p.m. here in Buffalo, waiting for my new EBT card because I canceled it when I was away because I was wrongfully accused, so I had to get a new card. But anyways, so in that way, I think of like the lightheartedness. Like I think of the farmers market. Like I could go there. It's like an attitude, right?
Hmm.
So it's not that you have to be psychic. It's not that you have to do anything outside of what's your natural self, ever, 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 forever, ever. So in that way, it's like if I go to the farmers market with this idea, my own idea in my head, and I take business cards. Now I'm gonna take the business cards regardless. But as I'm grabbing the business cards on Saturday, which is when it is, I think it's now because it's spring, the kind of like energy and intention of which I kind of grab these business cards, I think of it as people have already had so much go on in their life up to this point, and what is the thing that I can do that would be beneficial, but it's not heavy, it's not weighty, it's not serious, right? It's not dramatic, it's not uh desperate even, but I guess kind of in this way of it's simple, that this kindness can simply be you, you know, allowing yourself to smile, right? And we mentioned earlier blaming, right?
Mhm.
The energy of blaming. When you allow that to dissipate, that's really the secret to this. It's really the only secret involved in it. And in that way, it's basically if you go out to something or anything at all, and you allow yourself to simply start to allow the blame to start to kind of vanish. And when this happens, uh, and then if you have kind of that start to vanish, you might start to notice a different kind of energy in yourself where you kind of start to slip into a kind of maybe a different frame of mind,
Mhm.
right? And this kind of lightness happens. And then, you could say, well, yeah, I mean, that lightness is something that's desired by everybody, right? So then basically all you're doing is you're kind of acting like that, meaning that lightness itself as a being. So
Mhm.
that would be like the kind of lighthearted, not serious, right? I'm not a psychologist. There's heavy things to be dealt with. I'm not denying that. That's the end of that sentence, right? And then let yourself kind of be in this place of kind of like I'm just going to simply allow myself to be smiley, to be smiling, um, and to as far as it will go authentically. It's really all it is. And then that's kind of all that's really called upon us, I guess, so to speak. That it doesn't to have to be, like that would be overly heavy, right? If we let ourselves be, oh, I have to keep doing it and I have to do it all day and do this and that. And then what happens? What immediately happens? Blame,
No, no,
right?
you
That's
touched on something right there, though. The thing is you can change your mindset. By changing your mindset, instead of saying I have to do this, turn it around and say I get to do this. That's where things can get skewed up. Is you don't have to do anything. You get to do stuff. Like there's people out in this world. My mom traveled to Siberia and she came back after her travels, and I actually cried because she was telling me about their trash, and that she told me they use a coffee can as a trash can, and she said there's never anything in it, barely. And I think about our country, and it's like trash upon trash upon trash upon trash. But there's people worldwide that would give anything to have what you have right now. You know, that's where the gratitude comes in. And I have to kind of disagree with you about the happiness and joy thing. The happiness is an inside job. And
Mhm.
to get about where you're talking about, see, when I asked joy, to me, what brings you joy? The smell of old books, old architecture, hearing a
Mm,
child laugh, the smell of fresh cut grass,
yeah,
seeing somebody accomplish something they've never accomplished before brings me joy. Joy can be brought to you in any form, fashion, or way, just like kindness can. And so, one of the things I love to do, I'm a little kid, I'm a big kid at heart. I love to carry kites and I love to carry bubbles. And I was just
yeah.
recently in Seattle, dealing with my younger sister having to have dual brain surgery, and me and my bubble thing were sitting outside the hotel room lobby in the outside blowing bubbles. And
Mhm.
I kid you not, I had people running through the bubbles, giggling and laughing and thanking me for blowing the bubbles because guess what? It brought them joy. It made them have a remembrance of a time that wasn't so hectic and chaotic and where they could just be. You talk about being. A lot of times, 9 out of 10, people don't know how to just exist. They don't know how to just be. Because of our society and the way we are. It's go, 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 accomplish, accomplish, accomplish. And so people don't know how to just exist. They don't know how to just be. And that goes back to your meditation. And in all honesty, it's about practicing mindfulness and listening to your body and its cues to say, hey, I need a breather. I need to take time to be kind to myself so I may be kind and show kindness to others. E- Existing there's times you just gotta stop, pause, and breathe.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. For certain. Definitely, definitely, definitely. Um, I guess in that
We're
way,
human beings, not
um,
human doings.
yeah, yeah, go ahead.
We're human beings, not human doings. And it in the fast-paced society, it's something people just don't understand. In a world full of robots, just learn to be authentic, learn to be true to not just yourself, but the people you surround and are around. I'm the type of person. My mom and I used to laugh about this. I could be on a bus, I could be outside of a store, I could be in a store, I could be in a cab, but for some reason, I tend to make best friends everywhere I go. I end up hearing a lot of people's life stories and life circumstances. And when last fall, I was outside of Walmart waiting for my sisters, and I had, let's see, three different people come up and start talking to me just out of nowhere. And this one fella and I ended up getting hugs from all three of them. But this one fella started talking about his dad and about how his dad was mad at him, and something about how he had fed him after he kicked him out. And then I talked to him about it for a minute. I said, you know what? It's not really you that your dad is mad at, but it's your actions and your choices you're making in life. Yes, he's giving you a consequence for it, but don't look at it as he doesn't love you. It's because he loves you. He's giving you these consequences and allowing you to take a look at the actions you're taking in your life. And we continued talking, and he was like, no, I kind of like your perspective. And then he hugged me and he prayed with me. And I thought that was cool. I mean, yeah, going back to prayer, it's a beautiful, beautiful, powerful thing. And honestly, before my mom died, I was pretty happy that she no longer had to pray about my addictions I had. You know, that was one thing I was grateful for. But there's a light you exude. It doesn't matter. It, you have a light inside. Some people just have the light inside of them that just tell you you're a safe place for certain people.
Yes, I mean, obviously, safety, is hugely important. Um, and in that way, I guess, I guess, to be practical about, this, in that way, I think of the Dalai Lama. I recently got a book publisher actually here in Buffalo. I'm a professional author, as I mentioned earlier, musician, Reiki master, healer, Usui, and spiritual guide is my main title. I tell people if I was at a function, it would say spiritual guide, Dr. Joe, spiritual guide. Um, but yeah, so I guess with the books, or the my book that I got published, that I mentioned the Dalai Lama, and this quote that I think of with the Dalai Lama is, in the sense of, if you can't be kind, or if you can't not do something that would be harmful, I guess would be the main point, allowing yourself to stop. And I think that's a thing about kindness that belongs in this video, honestly, and is very, very much ethics. But basically, it's that if you are sensing, right, or that you're, I mean, a crime is a strong word to use, but I mean, in that way, if you're sensing that there's harm kind of coming from you, and going anywhere technically, um, you allowing yourself to stop is really the kindness, instead of trying to do something, right? So, like you mentioned, we're a human being, and I think you said, and a human doing, right?
No, we're
So,
not a human dude.
human being. Okay, so you didn't say and, you said human being. But I
Yeah,
mean, yeah,
I
and
said
that's,
we're a human being, not human doing.
yes, that's to my point in that way, that a kind of returning back to that sanity of it, and letting go of the of the the doing, kind of that part. And in that way, why I'm saying this, and it's for people that, if they hear this, it really could stop and prevent their lives from being a disaster, and or other people's, right, from ruin, in that sense, very clearly, right.
Hmm.
If you sense that, and because our mind can go into the human doing thing, like I think of, like, to give a hypothetical example, we've all been exposed to kind of the, I think of, like, movies like the, like, 8 Mile or something, like with Eminem, or something, like, where it shows kind of like the other wrong side of the tracks, and then those people like, this is the only side of the tracks, what are you talking about, right? That, and it's just like that, it's a real life thing, unfortunately, that no one prefers, and that whatever words you want to put on that, good luck without being insulting. And I'll just stop now, because I don't have to say more words on it. I don't have to try and not be insulting to make my point. But my point of it is basically that us getting into a place where we, like, I think of, like, we mentioned our childhoods, right? If someone
Yeah.
grew up with a difficult influence, right? So by an adult who is supposed to be better, and they weren't. So they have that already, in that they had no chance of that not happening. So that's already the case. Now they get to be 15 plus years old, and they're kind of on the fence. They're on the fence, ethically speaking, right? I'm a potential harm, and or not, right? So they're like 50-50, right? So then if they hear something like this, and they start to say they get in the majority of harm, and they hear something like this, and they're at 70, moving towards steadily to 75%, they're 16, they're 17, they're 18, right? Or whatever, or 25 even, right? It takes that long to get up there. They survive that long, right? Because we do have police, and we do have other people, right, who want to have protective instincts, right? So in that
Hmm.
way, this very simple but very, very needed teaching is basically would be kindness, right? In that sense, that allowing the doing to end, because you're saying to yourself, I don't have anything in me that's giving me advice enough that when I wake up tomorrow morning, I have something to do that would be, like, not harmful, right? And I've made it this far in my life because maybe you could just say God, even though you don't even recognize it yet, right? Maybe 5 years down the road, you might recognize it, but God wants you to be there 5 years down the road. So then, basically, in that way, that us, getting getting to that place where we allow ourselves to notice, because the goal, right, back to psychology, what is the thing that they would tell that person in psychology is allow your eyes to be open, right? So noticing, and then as they start to notice again, so to speak, they'll be able to come out of that unethical, uh like, kind of affliction, right, in themselves, that unethical side of themselves would end, right? So really, that's the thing. But noticing is not an action; it's not a doing, right? So then, that's what the power of this lesson. It saves lives. I guess I could say I tie it to the Dalai Lama, the great Buddhist spiritual leader, who would say and talk about that same thing. He's very old now, and he has basically made that point. And kindness was the main word of his incarnation, for sure. Because well, yes, I win. Kindness, number one word of Dalai Lama's incarnation. So anyway, so in that way, then basically, so yeah, us, um, I guess in that way, the kindness would be us simply knowing that, right, and acknowledging that, recognizing that, um, and knowing that we deserve to be happy and not suffer needlessly, and in that, there's we already mentioned meditation, right? And in that, that's another aspect of it not being a doing, being a human being, right? In that way that there's things on the other side of the tracks, on the other side of the fence that we can't get to with our arms and our legs, except when we're sitting, when we're still, um, and allowing that stillness to be the thing that's doing, right? So instead of us being the thing that's doing, allowing the stillness to be the thing that's doing, that's moving, that's creating, even, right? Allowing that to be that. Um, anyways,
Hmm, I don't know. The whole kind of things boils back down to me for just unconditional love and acceptance of where people are at in their lives and not judging. A lot of things, the kindness, there's a lot of different teachings in different religions, but I'm a conglomerate. I take what I need and I leave the rest. Everything was interpreted by man, and a lot of the things have multiple meanings that were interpreted. So that is one reason I just take what I need and leave the rest. And for me, it boils down to uh, I am not big on the whole religious thing. I'm not big on organized religion either. I take pretty much what I need from any religion that it corresponds to what resonates with myself. Um,
yes.
and for me, it just boils down to the greatest commandment of basically any religion you look into: love thy neighbor,
Hmm.
unconditionally love, just love. It boils down to love. And that's what this world is in need of, is just love, unconditional love. And I get a little frustrated at people sometimes because, I mean, if you're in recovery and stuff and you have a
Yeah.
past, it, it, you, how can you judge somebody if you've done the same things in your life and you're trying to learn how to just love people unconditionally? How does that work? I try to make it make sense in my mind and I can't, because it's like, wait a minute, you just shut up. You've been there, done that, and you really can't. And the whole tracks thing, yeah, I grew up with that. It's like you grew up on the other side of the tracks, and it's like it doesn't matter what side of the tracks you grew up on. We all bleed the same blood. We all,
Yes.
and that boils down to control as well. It's like I try to tell people, the next time you have a stomach bug, show me exactly how much control you have. And it just goes, we're not in the driver's seat, is all I can say. I don't care what you call it. You can call it God, you can call it your higher power, the divine, the universe, and it boils back to our temples, which are our bodies, and that's the first connection you have to the divine, is inside yourself. And the whole kindness thing just for me boils back down to unconditional love and acceptance of where everybody's at in their journey, and to do no harm. It, that boils back down to the kindness. And you never know what people are going through, and also boils back down to do unto others as you like have done unto you. The kindness and the unconditional love.
Yes. Of course. Yeah. Love. I mean, obviously, love and kindness are different things, so to speak, right? I mean, linguistically speaking, we understand that, right? Love and kindness, right? Are two different words. And I guess I'll talk about this. There's I mentioned, I think I mentioned, move this back because yes, moving around. Okay. I mentioned my books, and I have a book called The Reform of the Education System. And I actually
Mm-hmm.
came up with my own ideas for courses, and something called Opportunities for Growth. The courses that I came up with are cultural appreciation, life skills, etiquette, and proper perspective on healing. So, and this other thing that I came up with, I call the opportunities for growth, or OFG, like kind of like I think of like a hub, right? Like I
Mm-hmm.
remember from my college days, they would have like that word hub. So like OFG hub. So opportunities for growth, in context of love and kindness, you know, um, love in that kind of way goes into a place that escapes kindness, because kindness has an implication, the implication of a kind of intention, and in that way. And love is void, right? So that's why love is the greatest, because it doesn't have any of anything, right? So that by definition, the word void, right, meaning that it's lacking in a substance, but yet love is very, very real. Um, but it's not a kind of like a thing, doesn't have kind of like a agenda intention, but it's real. It's and that's why you just kind of can say, well, God is love, and God is reality, right? So it kind of just goes, that how it goes, I guess. Um, but in context of kindness, I think of like that, this opportunities for growth hub and or idea that I have, that certainly, there's other people, places, and things and organizations that have that same recognition of that need in us all. So the opportunities for growth is basically that it's like us taking our resources as a species, and kind of, I say, like aiming them, in the sense that we are um allowing our uh I guess our ourselves, all of us, to be optimized, which is obviously the greatest kindness, the most serious kindness, in that sense of we have a whole life to live, and us kind of seeing clearly, would result in us adopting this immediately. And like I said, I'm sure there's other people, places, things, and organizations that have already begun doing that. Um, but yeah, so in that way, kindness being kind of grounded in and actualized, it would kind of translate as that, occurring, the opportunities for growth, which I didn't really go into, but it's basically that we have, phones, computers, GPSs, and airplanes and buses, and different places and cultures and nations and languages, and foods to try, and occupations, and experiences and vacations to have. So in that way, if we understand that, those are all opportunities for growth, and it applies to every single soul that comes in to live on the earth. So thus the whole thing is that basically the next step is basically the rational one, that, well, then we got to aim our technology properly, right? So that's really all it is that. And then basically it's in combination with the education system, and it's not ever against it. It's the same exact thing, vision, so to speak, the same exact vision. Um, but yeah, globally speaking. So I think of that as the kind of like structured kindness, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
we can think of kind of like a individual kindness, right? Myself alone, right? And
Yeah.
me, what I'm doing day to day, holding the door open for the people, that general kind of kindness. And then so I guess to kind of see the kind of uh in that way, that kind of I don't know, the roots, or the capabilities of kindness on a kind of structured level, using my own idea as an example. But yes. Anyways, we're at an hour and 14 minutes, so we probably shouldn't go too much longer. But if there's some final things you want to say, Miss Crystal, my friend, thank you for being on. Please feel free to do so.
I'm going to touch quickly back onto your traditions and roots and cultures really quickly since we're at that time. Uh, so you have endangered species. You're talking about kindness. You have endangered species. When any animal falls under 10,000, it is considered an endangered species. But the thing about animals, yes, they may be beautiful, and yes, they may provide, food sources. But indigenous peoples worldwide can fall well under 10,000. There's some that are barely at 1,500. Speaking of cultures and traditions and heritage and roots, you got some that are barely at 1,500. Why are they not considered an endangered species? You will lose a language, a culture, traditions, and roots. Okay, we're mammals, so for therefore we are animals. So why are we not endangered species? Touching on your kindness. Uh,
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I was going to say to agree with this point here at the end is basically that the global scale of kindness, in the sense that you're talking about animals, endangered species, and the understanding of the kind of connectivity, oneness, and similarity and or correlation with all of us as human beings, right? And that kindness literally being that, right? That connection, that connectivity. Um,
yeah,
so, in the sense that if we understand what's always appropriate is kindness. Like, for example, what do we say? Or I guess we could say, like, what's a thing is we're looking for what? Like common ground or something like that. So, kindness is always appropriate, right? In that
yeah,
way, right? So, if we're like like a house I used to live at, they would have deer, that would be out there, and this deer would be uh standing there, and kind of minding their business, and my kindness and their kindness would equal a positive experience for all involved, which would be three deer if I'm lucky and myself. And in that kind of way, that's an objective truth, but if we understand that, well, what else is even present? I didn't make the earth there. People have been murdered and fallen on the grass. So not that. The deer, I didn't make them come out of the forest. They came out on their own. I came outside of my house on their own. We happened to be at the same spot, but me and the deer can't talk. I don't want to go up to the deer in particular. They haven't made any gesture towards me in particular. But what's still the case and what's still appropriate is kindness, right? Because kindness is always appropriate. And allowing, and I guess in that way, the cool thing about that is it doesn't have to be complicated. And I understand as a philosopher that we don't want to fail, and we don't want to be confused, obviously, naturally. So what we can do is we can allow ourselves to simply have that one simple thing, that one nugget, and a nugget implying like the precious stone, right? Like gold, like having that to keep for ourselves. So like kindness is like that nugget, right? That we can kind of, so to say, ingest into our souls, and then basically you're living out your life in that space of kindness. And I guess you could say, I mean, I can assert as a serious Buddhist spiritual guide, a Zen Buddhist, that's what really the whole thing is about anyways. And you could call that karma, that you walking out your walk, uh through your very life, and really just having that simple, that's the only thing. And then that just resting, it might feel kind of different, right? If you're not used to being maybe wholehearted about anything, right? And then you get someone like me in your life, so a video like this, Dalai Lama, etc. Maybe a Christian person, doesn't have to just be a Buddhist, right? It can be anything with God. It can be an ant walking on the sidewalk that you almost stepped on, and you said, "I am huffing and puffing down the street," and you almost killed this ant, and you said, "No," right? And then something happens, right? You have a change of heart, and in that way, that can develop into something conscious later on. But you understand that kindness, in there, um, is yeah, it's like the core. It's like we say like the real. How we always talk about how we want people to be real. Well, that's what the real. In that way, that for us to allow that kindness to touch our deepest roots, and then basically we living our lives. So if that becomes us becoming Buddhist, becoming Christian, right? Following our highest excitement, obviously, right? Or simply just being simple, and maybe being even maybe we switch, we be like a hermit, right? So it's not we are going away from things, right? So, but if you understand that, all of that stuff is coming out of that root, which is just kindness. Um, and then we start to awaken to the actual uh, validity of kindness itself, right? On a conscious level, like it becomes a recognition mentally, intellectually, which I guess yes. Then my mind just goes naturally to spirituality, with that. But yeah. Anyways, do you have any final words, final points, and or prayers? Prayer. I was going to say a prayer at the end. And this has been lovely, ma'am. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Miss Crystal, for your time. Angel blessings.
as usual. I was just thinking about your animal thing and the deer. I'm an animal person. I
Uh,
personally would have interacted with them. I my family gets mad at me. I pet moose. I pet bear. I pet orca. uh, I just I'm an animal person, and I tend to and the tree hugging loving person. I hug the trees and I thank the trees, and I've got pictures of me from here to Mexico to Tennessee hugging trees. But I would have made friends with the animals, the deer.
that's lovely. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Uh yes. And are you Native American? Or did I ask that before?
I am Siberian, Yupik Eskimo, Chickasaw Indian, and Irish. I call myself an Ireskian.
So the name of the you said it was the native was it
Chickasaw
native
Indian?
Chickasaw.
Yeah, I'm Siberian, Yupik Eskimo, which I lean more towards because it was what I was raised in. Um, I was raised in third world America, Alaska, and I was raised living off the land and in nature.
Ah, yes, that's a very, I guess in that way, yeah, certainly. Yeah, I think of, I guess I'll end with this prayer. And thank you, thank you, thank you. Like I said, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Um, I think of people that uh you saying being raised off of the land, right? So us being in that place where we can recognize the trees, the animals, the plant life, and other people and other beings, and having this recognition and having this practical understanding, right, as we're developing. And I pray that in that way that we don't have disdain. We don't have disdain for life, and instead have that gratefulness, right, in ourself. And I pray that over everybody, right? Because it's the same earth for every single person. If they're in one spot of land, it's the same piece of land no matter who it is, right? So that's why Earth, because that's stable, that's reliable, that's our home. And so I guess my prayer in that way is that we can that we can have more gratefulness and less disdain. Uh yeah. So anyways, amen, amen, amen. Feel free to add
Amen.
to the prayer if there's anything you want to add. I'll let you close.
I just pray that people return to love and return to self and remember that this earth is our home and to quit doing it harm. It provides for us, it provides for all our needs, everything. And just pray people realize that.
Thank you. Amen. Awesome. All right. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in. Angel blessings, everyone. Dr. Joe Vertino, spiritual guide, author, musician, and Reiki master healer Usui. Oh, I like to show off. I'll show this off at the end here. I got my beautiful business cards. If you can see that, these are so beautiful, aren't they? Look how beautiful. Beautiful. And then just on the back, my different stuff and everything like that. I'm certainly grateful for these, um, and everything. So, all right. Thank you. Thank you,
Uh-oh.
Miss. Many
Bye.
love
It shut
going to.
down on me. My phone's shutting down.
All right. Have a good night, morning, afternoon, what have you, everybody. Thank you for tuning
Bye.
in. All right. Amen. Bye.